Uniform personnel, I pledge. Motion road. Wheel to the back. 1, 3. To the right. Quick. March.
Good afternoon. I am Chaplain Bill Roscoe, Canyon County Sheriff's Office. Be leading in the invocation if you join me in prayer. Almighty God, thank you for this time to honor the fallen, to remember the sacrifice that they made so that others could live in peace and safety. We pray, God, that even now you would give comfort to those who mourn and to those whose hearts are aching with the pain of loss. Be their strength and their hope. And God, we ask that you will protect those who today stand between evil and good, and that you will bless and protect their families as well. Be with us in this time of remembrance and a time to honor those who serve in law enforcement, and we will give you thanks in the Master's name. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Personnel, hold, here, out!
Thank you. You may be seated. At this time, I do wish to thank many individuals, quite frankly. Canyon County Sheriff's Honor Guard, Caldwell Police Department, Pipes and Drummers, thank you for being here and sharing that, and executive officers, thank you for allowing that to happen. Thank you to all of our law enforcement colleagues, professionals throughout the valley who've brought their vehicles here to be displayed in honor of this day and of why we're here this week to meet as law enforcement professionals and as a community to give honor to those who have truly given the ultimate sacrifice. Jeannie, my wife, thank you for being here. Without you, I could not do what I do. As many wives and spouses in this room and those who are out on the road today. Thank you to the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you for being here today. I know that one of you doesn't feel very well, so thank you for making the effort. And thank you again for providing a facility like this where we could hold a gathering of so many to remember why we're here and why we do what we do. So thank you very much. And to all of our honored guests, of course, Hal Colburn, my great friend, longtime friend, and thank you. Beautiful rendition, as always. Thank you for always taking the time to be with us. And of course, I don't want to say my partner in crime, but he sort of is. Our great chaplain, Reverend Bill Roscoe from the Boise Rescue Mission, who's my co-chair of this event. And we are proud to announce that this is our 12th annual event of doing this. So for the last 11 years, we've been at the little park up on Canyon Hill, and we decided we would try to move it in for a little bit of temperature controlled, and we're very glad we did. So thank you, Bill, for all the efforts. And then to literally the dozens and dozens of volunteers that helped put this thing on today, from my office, from Caldwell, the numbers, it's just endless. The people that commit their time, and the committee, I have a tremendous committee, and they're a well-oiled machine, I can tell you. We only meet a couple of times now, and they pull this thing off, and all those who have helped decorate over the last 2 days. So with that, I'll move into, in a moment, I'm going to introduce our guest speakers. But just for to show the magnitude of why we're here, just yesterday, the number of officers killed in line of duty in 2024 from January 1st through yesterday was 58. Today that number is 59. That's how quickly it changes. In America, we lost another officer in the last 24 hours in the line of duty. It's certainly not lost on those of you who are here. It's certainly not lost on our speakers, and I'm very thankful that they took the time to commit to come here. And as always, when I speak at this event and others, we can't forget the people who allow us, officers in blue, who are out there today doing what they do so that we can be safe. We can't forget those who are left at home, day and night. Wives, husbands, children, moms, dads. They're riding that shift with us. Every shift. No one thinks about that. A lot of us don't think about it. We're guilty that we just got to get out that door and get in that car or go on that mission. We forget that there's someone back home keeping things going so that we can be a part of the mission. So as we remember today, we want to remember all the families that, again, are in this mission with us. Without them, we can't do our job. So thank you. Our first speaker today, most all of you know, our United States Attorney for the District of Idaho. A colleague, a good friend of mine, a good friend of many people in this room. He works tirelessly to address the criminality and bring justice for the victims in our state under the United States Department of Justice. He's highly esteemed He works tirelessly with all law enforcement partners, state, local, federal, and he always makes time if we want to bring a case or if we ask him to join us in a place like this. It's my esteemed honor to welcome Josh Hurwitz, your United States Attorney for the District of Idaho.
Good afternoon. It's my honor to join you today to remember the law enforcement officers who have given their life in service of Canyon County, in service of Idaho, and in service of our nation. Sheriff Donahue, I want to thank you for your partnership and for inviting me here today. And I want to thank all of our law enforcement partners in Canyon County and around Idaho, throughout Idaho, all of Idaho, who work tirelessly with us and with each other in our common purpose of keeping all of our communities safe and upholding the rule of law under the Constitution. National Police Week is an important, critical time of the year for us to reflect on all of those in law enforcement who we work with, and of course those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. This week in our nation's capital, colleagues of mine at the Department of Justice joined together with law enforcement officers from all over the country. I know that Chief Ingram from Caldwell was representing Idaho there, in large-scale ceremonies and services on the Capitol Mall and in places like Arlington National Cemetery. In cities like New York and Los Angeles, which have some of the largest police departments in our nation, there were ceremonies marking the fallen from those locations. But events like this in a predominantly rural county with a population of less than, I think it's less than 1% of 1% of 1% of our nation's population, these events are equally important, and I'm so honored to be here as many of my fellow U.S. attorneys from around the country joined in similar ceremonies to mark this week and this occasion. The work of our law enforcement officers in Idaho is as important as the work of any law enforcement officer anywhere in our country. Their sacrifice deserves the respect that we see this week in our nation's capital in Washington. And it's not just, as the sheriff mentioned, the officers themselves, it's the families who ride along, as the sheriff said, and who have been left behind. And we honor their sacrifice, and we must do so every day. Sadly, we were reminded how immediate and how painful that sacrifice can be nearly a month ago, with the loss of Ada County Sheriff Deputy Tobin Bolter. He was lost to a senseless and cowardly act of violence. And we are seeing that far too often throughout our nation. And prosecutors like myself are rededicating ourselves to prosecuting those heinous crimes and trying to prevent that gun violence and that other violence against officers in the first place. Here in Idaho, we saw how that senseless tragedy united law enforcement together. But law enforcement here, we're lucky, was already united. In addition to law enforcement, though, we saw the community band together and support, really through an outpouring of support, all of our law enforcement officers. And from my perspective, we saw a state unite in our grief and in our respect and in our gratitude for those in Ada County, the Treasure Valley, and throughout Idaho. This deep appreciation for law enforcement is not something we should take for granted. It's something that we should share with those that aren't here today with us. So I ask you to hold on to that sense of gratitude and that sense of community. It's really a sense of community, not just this week, not just today, but every week and throughout the year. Because this is the true spirit of our country. Regardless of all the divisions that we see in the headlines, this is what America is about to me. We are a country of laws, and we are bound together by the rule of law. And without law enforcement, that cannot happen. Without peace officers like Deputy Bolter, we cannot be America, and we cannot be free as individuals. So for this reason, I would suggest to you that while today is about recognizing those officers who have fallen, and that's certainly what today is about, it's also about recognizing and dedicating ourselves to the ideals for which they lived and that they died protecting. These ideals led them to be police officers in the first place. These ideals are the ideals of our founding: fairness, justice, and hope for a stronger community and a brighter future for our children. So today we pay tribute to the fallen officers, Deputy Bolter, and all of those who we've lost, who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for this county, for our state, and for our nation, so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we all deserve as Americans. We remember their courage. We commit ourselves to the mission to which they dedicated their lives. And again, we recognize the ongoing sacrifices of their families. So on behalf of the entire United States Department of Justice, I humbly extend my deepest condolences to the family members, the descendants, the partners, the colleagues, and the friends who are here today to remember those that you knew and that you loved. I cannot personally know your grief or comprehend your sacrifice, but I can tell you that we thank you and we mourn with you. And every day through our work, in my office and through our partnerships around the state, we try our best to honor the memories of those who were lost. We will be resolute in our pursuit of the mission for which they gave their lives, a safe community where we have, as we all know, liberty, and where we all can pursue happiness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hurwitz. At this time, not just because my executive assistant reminded me that I went out of order, I'd already recognized it, just so you all know. We have the Valley View High School Choir joining us today, and because they are on another timeline, they're going to come up and do a musical performance, and then unfortunately, they have to get out of here, so we're going to give them a little bit of time. But we truly appreciate Ms. Steinbach and her choir from Valley View High School. So please join me in welcoming them to the stage. Wow, that was phenomenal. Thank you so much. Ms. Stombach, thank you for bringing everyone over, and thank you, all the participants, for joining us here today. That was very, very moving. Unfortunately, like I say, they have to take off, but we appreciate them being here and taking the time. Our next speaker today is a longtime friend of law enforcement, longtime friend of mine, longtime friend of many of you in this room, and has been a great, great senator for the state of Idaho and, of course, Canyon County. I could go on and on probably, Senator. There's been so much, so many times we've been in the battles together in the trenches, and you have without fail represented law enforcement and justice in this great state. So I'd like to introduce now our next speaker, Senator Todd Lakey.
As Sheriff Donahue said, that choir was beautiful. Thank you. So for me, this service is always an opportunity to remember and to give thanks. It reminds us to live in gratitude. I'd like to thank Sheriff Donahue and Reverend Bill Roscoe for their consistent commitment to bringing us together for this service every year. I'm grateful for the other speakers that I'm speaking with, for Josh Hurwitz, our U.S. Attorney, for Captain Winans from the ISP, but I'm particularly grateful to be able to share the stage with Sheriff Matt Clifford. I appreciate him being here today, and with our recent events, I'd really prefer just to sit down and listen to what he has to say. I want to thank you all for coming today and for supporting our law enforcement community. I'm always grateful and humbled by this opportunity to participate in this service, where we express gratitude and respect for our law enforcement community, and especially commemorate the heroes who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the service of others. Today is important. Today is important because it helps us remember the value of service and sacrifice, and the depth of the meaning of the badge that's worn by many of those that are here today. It's important that we as citizens remember the vital role that our law enforcement officers hold in maintaining the strength and the quality of our communities. And it's important that we teach our children to have respect, appreciation, and admiration for our peace officers, so that we have more kids saying they want to be a police officer when they grow up and fill the shoes of those that are currently serving. So as I thought about what I might say today, I kept coming back to the memorial service for Deputy Tobin Bolter. And Deputy Bolter was certainly an exceptional human being who valued service over self. As I attended his service and watched and listened to those that participated, and then as I talked with those that were not in law enforcement after the service and that were watching the service, there were two themes that stood out to me as I thought about that service and talked to others. First was the focus on God, the importance of fidelity and faith in God and a higher purpose as we live our lives. And second was the focus on others, the importance of compassion, commitment, love, and respect toward others, with an emphasis on family, including our law enforcement family and our community. Those two themes reminded me of what has been described as the two greatest commandments in the law. First, to serve God, and second, to love and serve thy neighbor and others. I apologize, my allergies act up when I talk about God, family, and country. Those two commandments, with a good blue tint, were clearly exemplified by Deputy Bolton and his family and those that led and participated in that service. Our society today would benefit greatly and be very different if more people focused on those two things, and there was more selflessness and less selfishness in our society. The family is a historic bedrock of our society and our communities. If everyone made family and service to others their priorities in their lives, most of our community problems and our criminal justice issues would be non-existent or severely diminished. I myself and many others that I've spoken to were inspired by the genuine love, respect, and compassion demonstrated on an individual level and on a very large scale by Deputy Bolton's immediate family and their law enforcement family. A career in law enforcement is all about sacrifice and putting service to others in your community above self-interest. I also, like Sheriff Donahue, want to specifically recognize and appreciate the family members of our law enforcement community. They make that same sacrifice and have that same commitment to service to others and their communities as they sacrifice and support their family members. There are spouses, as we all know, that sleep alone so that we can sleep safely in our homes. We all love living in Idaho because of what Idaho is. Idaho is a place where we largely support our law enforcement community. That's part of what makes Idaho so great. I previously mentioned that I have a wooden U.S. flag on my wall in my Senate office. It holds coins from various law enforcement agencies around the state. And it has the blue line representing our law enforcement officers and their service and sacrifice. And for me, that's a reminder every day when I'm in session to be grateful for and cognizant of those that serve and sacrifice. That blue line separates good from evil, order from chaos, decency from villainy, and anarchy from our divinely inspired nation of laws. But that line also represents hope and the application of both justice and compassion and mercy. And as I pondered recent events in that memorial service, I want to express my gratitude for the care and compassion for others that are demonstrated by our law enforcement community on a daily basis. I'm grateful for the officers that don't rest until that lost child or family member is found and brought safely home. I'm grateful for the SROs and other officers that build relationships and serve as positive role models for our youth. I'm grateful for the victim witness coordinators that help provide comfort, hope, and understanding to victims of abuse and other crimes. I'm grateful for dispatchers that calmly and compassionately serve and assist people in the most stressful situations imaginable and coordinate getting to help to them as quickly as possible. I'm grateful for officers that are first on the scenes of horrific accidents and crimes and get people to safety and provide medical attention until other responders arrive. I'm grateful for the officer that helps the mom on the minivan change her flat tire. I'm grateful to all those behind the scenes that enable our law enforcement team to function and do their job in serving and protecting our communities. Our law enforcement community in Idaho reflects the implementation of those two greatest commandments, service to our Creator and service to others. And for those that we remember today, we also know that there's no greater love than that displayed by the man or woman who lays down their life in the service of others. I want to conclude with one of my favorite police officer prayers. And it goes as follows. Lord, I ask for courage to face and conquer my own fears, and courage to take me where others will not go. I ask for strength of body to protect others and strength of spirit to lead others. I ask for dedication to do my job and do it well, dedication to my community to keep it safe. Give me, Lord, concern for those who trust me and compassion for those who need me. And please, Lord, through it all, be by my side. I want to thank all those that serve and have served, and may God bless and keep you and your families in his caring and compassionate embrace. And may God help all of us to remember the importance of family and selfless service, not just today, but every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I know the audience, and as well as myself, know your words are heartfelt. You've been in this for a long time with all of us in this fight. Senator brings to mind a few things I just want to quickly mention. Today we'll remember with a ceremony, a ceremonial aspect of this day of laying a single rose by the wreath for every officer in the state of Idaho who has lost their lives. That number is 77. It's a lot. It's a lot for such a young state, a small state. The world, as we know, is in a bit of chaos. We're not excluded in our great country. But our great country will only remain great if law enforcement stands the line and holds that line. One thing I have not mentioned yet today is our military people in this crowd and the military people who are in blue. So thank you for your service, past and present. The military is defending us every day across many, many distances and oceans, quite frankly. I always talk about how they hold the line to protect our country, and law enforcement holds the line here. We can't do it without each other. And this chaos that Senator just spoke about, that thin blue line separates that chaos from all that we protect. These people that we honor today, who did give that ultimate sacrifice, they knew that. They knew it in their hearts. And they were willing to still give everything. You've heard me say this many times. We are called to this service. There is no way we are not. God had a plan. He has a plan. Sometimes it's hard to follow the plan. Sometimes some of us fight that plan. But at the end of the day, He called us to be here. He called those 77 to be right where they were on that day or night, protecting all of us. We must do what we're doing to stay above the chaos. Our next speaker, Captain Michael Winans, from Idaho State Police. Newly appointed captain, I may say. I spoke to the colonel a few weeks ago. The colonel's a great friend of ours as well, and he said he would be out of the country this week. He had a replacement. And I said, well, please let the captain come and join us here today. And of course, we have some other ISP officers in the room. I cannot speak highly enough for our partners and our colleagues at the Idaho State Police. I can speak as a sheriff in this county, and for all my colleagues, my chiefs of police who are here today, we are overwhelmed with work, overwhelmed with calls of service, and trying to respond to everything that's out there. And the amount of work that the Idaho State Police picks up on our behalf is immeasurable, immeasurable. They do so much for us. So it is my great honor to introduce our next speaker, Captain Michael Winans. Thank you so much for being here, Captain.
Thank you, Sheriff. I am extremely humbled by this opportunity today to speak to you, and I've spent quite a bit of time thinking about what I could say. I'm very grateful to have a small part in honoring the men and women who serve in law enforcement, and especially those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice on our behalf. I've thought a lot about this opportunity and some of the things that I might share with you. I thought it might be helpful to share with you a little bit about my background and why I chose to enter this profession, my story might be similar to some of yours. My grandfather, Curtis Olson, served in the Navy during World War II. He was a pilot for a landing craft during the invasion of Okinawa. He never really spoke of his experiences in the war except for one time when he talked about being strafed by a Japanese Zero on the beaches of Okinawa. In spite of the fear that he felt and the very real possibility that he was going to lose his life, he completed his mission. That story always stuck with me because I truly admired the kind of man that he was, and he inspired me with a sense of duty and a love for my country. So a few years later, I found myself with a desire to serve my community and be part of something bigger than myself. In 1997, I was hired as a police officer with the Blackfoot Police Department in Southeast Idaho. Not long after joining the department, I learned what it really meant to be a police officer and just how often members of our community rely upon us when they simply have nowhere else to go. For example, we had a severely disabled man that lived in our community. He was unable to get out of bed in the morning and unable to go to bed at night without help. He was out of options. So every night, every day, police officers from our department would go to his house and help him into bed and out of bed. This occurred for a while until he eventually passed away. Although unusual, it was a great experience for me as a young police officer to witness firsthand the compassion my fellow officers routinely demonstrated to members of our community. It is through this same lens of compassion and a desire to serve that I have personally witnessed many acts of bravery and sacrifice in this profession. Not long ago, I was directly involved in an incident that reinforced this idea. This past January, while working in the Pocatello area, a sheriff's deputy was engaged in a high-speed pursuit with a crazed, drugged driver that decided to go the wrong way on Interstate 86. To make matters worse, it was snowing and there was heavy traffic that evening. It soon became apparent to the troopers responding to the scene that the only way to stop this driver was to intentionally crash into him. This would prevent the suspect from seriously injuring or killing an innocent motorist in a head-on collision. And so the trooper, a husband, and a father of two young girls, prepared to intentionally crash into the suspect. He understood the consequences. He also recognized that there were numerous unsuspecting motorists in the area that didn't know that a wrong-way driver was barreling towards them. So he thought of his family, and then he quickly came back to the reality of what he needed to do. The trooper successfully rammed the suspect and miraculously escaped with only minor injuries, and the suspect was taken into custody without any incident. Like the trooper in the story, anyone who has ever put on the badge knows that there is a very real possibility of not going home at the end of the shift. At any point during our tour of duty, we could be faced with a critical life or death situation. Even with this reality, men and women faithfully go to work to fulfill their duties as law enforcement officers every single day all over this country. After all, if we don't do it, who will? I've recently been very impressed with a bunch of young troopers for the Idaho State Police that have dealt with protests almost on a nightly basis at the Capitol. I've witnessed many examples of courageous calm as these troopers deal with people spewing profanity at them and trying to provoke them into some type of a situation. It makes me proud to see how these troopers conduct themselves and in the face of such conflict. In spite of what some people might think, you can't just pull anybody off the street and make them a cop. Not everyone is cut out for this job. I've personally witnessed many officers who started the field training program and realized that this job wasn't for them because it's kind of dangerous. I've also witnessed young police officers in the field training program with the Pocatello Police Department when their fellow officer was ambushed with an assault rifle during a domestic call. it only strengthened their resolve to stay in this profession and do what they needed to do. At the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C., each of the 4 pathway entrances to the memorial is adorned with a powerful statuary grouping of an adult lion protecting its cubs. The statues symbolize the protective role of our law enforcement officers and convey the strength, courage, and valor that are the hallmarks of those who serve. I would also like to share with you some of the words inscribed below these lions. It is not how these officers died that made them heroes. It is how they lived. This thought was certainly brought home to me as I attended Deputy Bolter's funeral and saw the kind of impact he had not only on his community but also on everyone that knew him, and especially his family. In valor, there is hope. Valor demonstrated by our police officers gives us hope for a safe and civilized nation. Valor, simply put, is great courage in the face of danger, something that I have witnessed time and time again, something I experienced very early on in my career, responding to a huge fight at a dance hall where I knew I was going to be outnumbered, but who else was going to go? And the final inscription, "The wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are as bold as a lion." We see that righteousness resembles that of a bold lion, standing in the face of danger, unafraid and unwilling to yield. This is in contrast to the unrighteous or wicked who choose to run instead of face their fears, further showing that in righteousness there is strength. What a noble profession we are part of. What greater call is there than to protect our communities from those that would do us harm? And so let us honor the memory of those who have laid down their lives in the service of their communities. Let us conduct ourselves with professionalism in all that we do so that their sacrifice will not be in vain. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Our next speaker for today, our last speaker for today, before we move into the other part of the ceremony, also rarely needs any introduction. Sheriff Clifford has been with Ada County Sheriff's Office for a long time. He's worked diligently to get where he's at, and he has overcome many obstacles, the most recent, of course, being the death of one of his officers. Matt and I are good friends, and we share a role in the Idaho Sheriff's Association that is very, very important to us, that we can depend on each other and reach out to each other in any time of need or a time for advice or suggestion or sometimes just to talk. I think Matt and I have experienced all those in the recent weeks. He's a great sheriff who oversees, I should say, the largest sheriff's office in the state of Idaho. It's not an easy task, and the sheer numbers are telling. But he has made time today in his busy schedule, quite busy schedule, to join us, and I'll share this with you. I hesitated to ask him to be here, knowing what he'd recently been through. But I called him the other day and I said, do you think you could? And he said, yeah, I think I'm ready. And it's just that type of fortitude that he has, and I know he instills in all of his officers. So with that, I'd like to introduce Sheriff Matt Clifford, Ada County Sheriff.
Sheriff Donahue. I'm going to be a little bit brief, and I appreciate the emotion that we've seen on stage because it's my mother's fault that I'm going to be brief. She's a very emotional person, and that gene dropped right into my DNA. So we're going to get through this, but it's not going to be very long. National Police Week is about remembering and honoring the sacrifice that law enforcement officers have made while doing their job. Last month, Ada County Deputy Tobin Bolter made the ultimate sacrifice while conducting a traffic stop in Boise. We were flooded with an outpouring of community support, and our local first responder community immediately surrounded us with their protective arms. We often talk about the brotherhood or the sisterhood of this profession, and to keep it in brevity, I'm just going to say brotherhood, not to offend anybody. But it's not something that you can truly understand until you felt it. It's dooring up in the late hours, in the late hours of night shift to talk about life. It's a clasped hand and a "how are you?" after an emotionally difficult call. It's the ribbing and the gentle teasing at briefing team lunch. In fact, I told the chief yesterday, that's how I know you like me, because he just called me on the phone and made fun of me. After we announced Deputy Bolter's passing, the brotherhood showed up stronger than I've ever felt in my career. When we realized we had a large-scale memorial service to plan in less than 2 weeks, local agencies volunteered people to focus their time on the task at hand. In less than 48 hours, we had a full-scale planning team. Departments from across the valley came together each morning to help us plan a memorial service that would honor Tobin and his family. The response from law enforcement across the nation for the procession and service was more than I could have imagined. To see the cordon of honor guard lead the family in, and line the entrance to the arena was awe-inspiring. During the service, Boise Police, Meridian Police, and Idaho State Police took care of our calls for service and all of their calls for service, so our on-duty deputies could attend the memorial service. Nampa Police, Caldwell Police, and Canyon County Sheriff's Office provided security, traffic control, motor units, honor guard, and the list just goes on. Internally, we checked on each other, we grieved together, and we came together united as an agency. The gestures of support during a time of tragedy demonstrate the strength and compassion of our profession. This has been one of the most difficult times in my career, but also a time where I could not be prouder to wear this badge and be part of this brotherhood of phenomenal men and women. So, let us not forget our fallen and injured officers like Tobin. Let us not forget that we live in a special place where our community is supportive and backs our mission. But let's remember that there is still evil in our world that will seek out others in order to do them harm, and we are not immune to their intentions. In the Treasure Valley, we can see that evil increasing. Since 2019, our agency has seen a 200% increase in assaults on our patrol deputies, and that's trending nowhere but up. And that figure should be concerning to all of us. But it should serve as that bold reminder to take your training seriously, know your equipment, watch each other's backs, always be cautious, and be professional. So that last one, be professional, it almost sounds like it doesn't belong in there. But the public we serve loves us because we are professionals. We are the professionals that maintain the way of life here in Idaho. Some of you moved here, and some of you have grown up in Idaho and stayed in Idaho because of the freedoms we are afforded here. Everyone sees the beauty of the state, how we honor the Second Amendment, or maybe they just straight up love our politics. But everyone loves Idaho because it's a law and order state, which makes it safer beyond the imagination of many states in the Union. You are the keepers of our way of life. You are the keepers of our freedom. And you are the reason Idahoans don't live with the fear of crime like many other places in our nation. Now, let's not just take this week to remember our fallen brothers and sisters. Let's remember them every day. Because we owe it to people like Tobin to keep fighting the fight of public safety and protecting the freedoms we enjoy. And we owe it to evildoers that would wreak havoc on our citizens and our officers to meet them head on, to prove that we will always be the thin blue line between the evil and those that we protect. So thank you, everyone, and everyone stay safe out there.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for the work that you do. Next, we are going to conduct our honor roll ceremony. The honor roll ceremony is a very solemn time to, as I mentioned before, lay a rose at the wreath for each of our fallen comrades. Over time, I have asked Senator Lakey and United States Attorney Josh Hurwitz to read the names of those fallen. At this time, I would ask the executive officers to please take your positions on each end of the tables, those who have been asked to do so. And I will ask Sheriff Clifford and Captain Winans to also join me down there. Gentlemen, if I could have you approach.
Tobin Bolter, 2024.
Wyatt Christopher Mazer, 2020.
Kent Donald Swanson, 2018.
Gregory K. Moore, 2015.
Joshua Eggleston, 2009.
Monty Leroy Matthews, 2009.
Lee S. Newbill, 2007.
Christopher John Hensley, 2003.
William J. Mann, 2002.
Scott W. Palmer, 2001.
James Brian Molson, 2001.
Philip Charles Anderson, 2001.
Linda Carol Huff, 1998.
Mark Arlen Stahl, 1997.
Dennis L. Remington, 1995.
Ronald W. Feldner, 1994.
William F. Deegan, 1992.
John T. Houston, 1989.
James Donald Miller, 1989.
Brent Jacobson, 1989.
James E. Simoneau, 1985.
William H. Pogue, 1981.
Wilson Conley Elms, 1981.
Douglas M. Dean, 1979.
E.C. Chuck Ashton, 1976.
Samuel B. Buntrock, 1974.
Howard Ames Schaffer, 1972.
Ross D. Flavel, 1972.
William J. Philpott, 1971.
Edward E. Davis, 1971.
Ralph T. Russell, 1970.
Walter W. Cox, 1970.
Vernal E. Keller, 1969.
Morley H. Cannon, 1969.
John H. Combs, 1969.
Bill H. Miller, 1968.
Vern M. Royce, 1968.
James A. Walker, 1966.
Stanley L. Larson, 1967.
Daniel Platt Woodland, 1964.
James M. Alexander, 1965.
Joseph Irel Hart, 1962.
Benjamin T. Newman, 1962.
Keith Judd, 1961.
E. A. Hans Hansen, 1957.
Fred L. Peterson, 1951.
John C. Ferris, 1946.
Carl F. Siegman, 1945.
John Glenn, 1940.
Ellsworth Arthur Teed, 1942.
F. F. Bob Hunter, 1939.
George A. Meffin, 1940.
Harry Merrill, 1938.
Craig Taylor Bracken, 1939.
Fontaine Cooper, 1935.
Henry C. Gibbons, 1935.
Thomas Russell, 1934.
Robert S. Walton, 1934.
Leonard Roth Cummings, Jr., 1928.
Hugh Nichols, 1931.
Billy Withington, Jr., 1928.
Louis J. Bancroft, 1928.
Gordon A. Harris, 1924.
Nathan H. Suter, 1926.
Neil Simpkins, 1924.
Samuel G. Garbett, 1924.
Charles H. Torrance, 1921.
Harold J. Mossman, 1921.
L.J. Taylor, 1914.
J.C. Sherrod, 1918.
W.J. McFadden, 1913.
Lafayette B. Hampton, 1914.
John Henry Hayes, 1904.
Elbert Percy Sweet, 1904.
David Stoddard, 1890.
Wallace Everett Cool, 1901. Y. Walter Coffin, 1883.
Thank you. Executive officers, if you would please return to your seats. Thank you. Before we do the closing remarks, I do want you to take note of our esteemed sponsors for today. We really couldn't do these type of events without the sponsorship and support of our community partners. They're all on the screens for you to see, and I just want to make sure that we thank them when opportunity arises, and including our great friend, Reverend Bill Roscoe, who brought his enormous amount of volunteers out yesterday to give us a hand. Really made things go quickly. So thank you for that to the volunteers and to the sponsors. Following my remarks, we will ask the pipes and drummers to come up as a retirement of the colors, and they will do a short procession out the doors to my left, the doors that you entered, and we will follow them out, and in succession we will have the pipes and drummers who will be in cadence here. I will ask my esteemed guests that have joined me on the stage to follow me off the stage, and then I'd ask all of you to follow in behind as we make a procession outside. And you'll see that our motorcycle officers are out there. We will walk between them, and our honor guard will lead us up to the bridge. And once everyone is assembled out there, we will release 77 blue balloons into the west in honor of those who have fallen in the state of Idaho. Thank you all for taking this time and this day to be here. I know we all have busy lives. I know there's lots of challenges and things that get in the way, but as you've heard our speakers today, there's no greater sacrifice or commitment than what we have seen and what we've heard about today. You know, we're often reminded that in law enforcement, as in other professions, especially our emergency responders, we ask these officers day and night to go out and do their job. We ask, as sheriffs, we ask our officers to work inside that jail across the state. And if a jail deputy works a 20-year career as a jail deputy or as a correctional officer, Department of Corrections, if they work a 20-year career, someone smarter than me has done the math, but they will have served 6 years of their life behind bars, serving their community. 6 years that they are behind those walls, keeping the people safe, doing their duty, protecting their constitutional rights for those who are in jail or in prison, going through the judicial system. Those folks and the folks we have out on patrol, our detectives, our task force officers, our dispatchers. We see and hear things that we can't see or unhear. It's impossible. And yet, we ask them every day and night to return home as if they didn't see or hear what they just did. To be normal, to go to their kids' track meet, their ball game, their choir concert. It's an incredible task. I have personally failed in that task many times. Because you can't get it out of your head. We are so proud to be wearing the uniform and wearing the badge. We will never do anything else. We don't know. This is what God asked us to do. And we'll continue to mend our watch. We'll continue to take our place on that wall. And some names will be read from this podium into the future. But the commitment of these men and women cannot be underscored deeply enough. If you ask them, they'll tell you, I love what I do. I love every bit of it, the good and the bad. So it's important that every year at this time, we meet back in a place like this to remember once again what they've given and what those who will lose their lives will give in the future. Because unfortunately, it will happen. It changed from 58 to 59 in the last 24 hours. I expect it, unfortunately, to change again. I want to commend my sincere gratitude to my partner, Bill Roscoe. Thank you, Bill, for guiding each of us, including me, especially me, perhaps, in leading these fine, fine people. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you all once again for just supporting us. The men behind me, the people in the streets, they don't hear it very often, but when people say thank you to them, you can't imagine what that means. They won't ask you for it. They won't even expect it. But when people say thank you, it means the world to them. And it helps them have the strength to face the next shift, to complete our mission. Because our mission is absolutely, we will never shake that. We have to succeed. And we, in the public sector, have to show the country that we will succeed. We will not fail. We will not back up to tyranny, to treason, to criminality. And this day, I think, helps show us that. So with that, I will ask my esteemed guests, I will ask our drummers and bagpipers to do the retirement of the colors. And as they complete that, they will stay here by this car in cadence. Once they do, gentlemen, I would ask that you join me behind them, and I'd ask all of you to join us in our procession out to the bridge.